From another sustainability brand biting the dust to influencer brands losing their luster, you're listening to This Week in E-commerce. Welcome back to episode 80 of This Week in E-commerce, the Ecom Nation podcast. My name is Mal Chia, taking you through the top headlines affecting Australian retail for another week. Now, we're going to kick this one off with a continuation of a story last week, which we talked about Designer X and some of the challenges which sustainability-focused startups like Designer X face. Now, it seems that in the last couple of weeks, another story has started to unveil itself. Now, this one is unsubstantiated just yet in terms of the fact that there has not actually been official reporting from the company. But from reading some of the messages online, it appears that ZeroCo, the darling of refillable, sustainable packaged goods, such as cleaning products like laundry detergent, hand wash, body wash, could be facing some trouble at the moment. It appears that for the last couple of weeks, they have been running a 50% off-site wide sale in an effort to clear the warehouse. But also reading through some of the comments on social media, it appears that they are also going dark as far as responding to some customer complaints, particularly around when they will be restocked with some out-of-stock products. Now, a lot of this stems from the fact that last year, ZeroCo did undergo a major redesign of the whole ZeroCo system. Previously, it was a refillable pouch, which you would have to buy, send back, and then would be refilled, and then you'd get it back every time you wanted to restock on your cleaning products. Now, they did change that last year to much fanfare to a really cool system called Forever Fill, which would essentially be a paper-based recyclable alternative. You'd put it into the Forever Fill container, dispenser, I should say, which would then dispense the product. When you were done, you would then discard, wash out the empty one, and recycle it just like your other recyclable goods. Now, that seemed to be a really, really great mechanism. I know this company quite well. I have worked with ZeroCo in the past, so full disclosure there is that I thought it was an amazing development in terms of where this product was going to head and also where the future of sustainability would lie with more recyclable-based packaging like this, hopefully looking to eliminate single-use plastics from landfill. Now, however, when this did come out towards the end of last year, there were a lot of issues with it, particularly around containers which were leaking, but also the mechanism not fully working as well. This led to quite significant delays with fulfilling customer orders. Now, they documented this whole process online. Mike Smith, the founder and CEO of ZeroCo, did quite an amazing job being very transparent with his customers around what that was looking like. So there was a lot of drama there, a lot of customers who weren't receiving their products, including me, I should say. But then they did a very good job of actually keeping people up to date throughout that whole process, ensuring that everyone knew where things were at, what caused the delays, and also when things were going to be shipped out as well. So as they kind of went through this process to rectify the issues with the leaking products and with the faulty dispensers, is that they communicated to the customers very, very clearly through a constant stream of videos, posts on social media, all the way through to when the last back-ordered product or pre-ordered product, I should say, was shipped off. And then Mike actually covered that one. It was kind of a cool video and a really nice moment for the brand, I thought. But it seems that since then, they have started to struggle. And I can imagine in this environment, particularly with the cost of living crisis, which we've all been talking about, that it's somehow not unexpected that as people are looking for more value in life, whether paying for a premium option for a new way of reducing single-use plastics is really where the market wanted to go. Particularly when people are doing it tough right now. Why would you want to then pay more than you need to? And while there's obviously going to be a customer base for that, you wonder whether this is, in this environment, just a mountain which is too high to climb, and whether this is a problem which the rest of the industry is now facing, as we're potentially seeing in some other cases as well. Obviously, Designer X was a different case. They had a dispute with a technology partner, which kind of led them down this path. But it currently seems that ZeroCo are experiencing some challenges here. So I look forward to seeing where this is going to head, whether this is something which they're going to be able to find their way through, navigate their path through this, or whether they're unfortunately going to have to go down the path which so many other retailers have had to in the last 6 to 12 months. But also whether this just again underscores the fact that while we like sustainability and we feel that we want sustainable options, when push comes to shove, we are still looking for the best value for us. Now, while ZeroCo's struggles are highlighting some of the risks which are inherent in product innovation, new product development, and really revolutionizing a whole way of retail, we're starting to see some other signs in the market that potentially other parts of retail are also not doing it too well. And this is with creator brands. Now, Paul and I have talked about creator brands quite a lot over the last couple of years, and we're big fans of it. We can see like plenty of great creator brands doing some really, really cool things, or at least some really great collaborations happening. You know, we've talked previously about Post Malone and his collaboration and ongoing collaborations with Crocs, but also with Oreos as well, where there's a Post Malone Oreo, which he's very deeply involved in. Yeah, and these great partnerships have been able to elevate both brands, you know, both the consumer brand, but then also highlighting the creator who's being involved in that as well. But we're starting to see some signs of weakness in this market with influencer-led brands. In particular, Sephora have reported that the people who are purchasing an influencer brand are 62% less likely to repurchase than someone purchasing a traditional beauty brand. So with all of this, we're seeing further drops in conversion rates from social media promotions, from creator-led brands, underperformance of these brands post-launch, and also investors starting to pull back from this as well. You can look at something like Prime Energy, which launched to so much fanfare, people willing to pay $1,000 for a bottle of Prime Energy, but now you can find a whole pallet of them on sale at Costco for 25 cents on the dollar. But as we see more and more as well, engagement with creator brands also seems to be declining as well, with average engagement rates across sponsored content decreasing by 40%, but also a 25% increase in customer acquisition costs for creator brands. So the valuations which some of these brands previously had commanded, such as Prime Energy, is really starting to dilute. And we can look at brands like Kylie Cosmetics, which launched with a lot of fanfare back in 2021. They achieved $600 million in sales in the first 3 years, but have since then really struggled to stay relevant. And they've since seen 30% year-on-year decline from 2021 to 2024. And a lot of this has come from the fact that, you know, there have been a lot of inconsistencies with the product. The founder, who was the face of the brand, is no longer as involved with it, but also further market saturation as well in this category. And you can also look at other beauty brands such as Addison Rae, who brought her brand to market, but very swiftly after bringing it to market has seen it really start to decline, to the point where last year Sephora pulled it from its shelves. But on the flip side, you can see a brand like Rare Beauty, which was founded by Selena Gomez. Selena Gomez started this brand and has grown it into a brand which is worth roughly about $1 billion or so. And she has done this not by making herself the face, but really actually starting to pull back from being the face of it. And now this has been stocked at Sephora and is still widely stocked at Sephora. And you can also see other brands such as Emma Chamberlain's Chamberlain Coffee, which shows that a founder who has been really involved with her brand has grown it from being a D2C brand in 2020 to now a brand with a national retail presence in the US across Target and Whole Foods, and has continued to show continual growth in the brand by continued product innovation, by continued marketing, but also with a founder who's really deeply ingrained in that brand. So you can see how this is starting to shift as well, that it's no longer about the quantity of influencer partnerships, but looking for the quality of influencer partnerships. That in this day and age, that it's so critical right now to have that authentic alignment between the creator and the product. And that if you are thinking of bringing aboard a creator into your brand, or you are in fact a creator, you really need to think about how do you actually keep that partnership alive all throughout the life cycle of the brand and of the product as well. Because what customers crave is that authenticity. And more than ever, they can see when that misalignment is there when a creator is no longer interested in that brand and steps out versus when they're really heavily involved. As we move away from vanity metrics such as sales, initial launch sales, and actually focus more on that long-term brand building and that long-term value versus focusing on short-term promotion. So in terms of marketing, we're really starting to need to reassess what our relationship is with creators and how do we continue to leverage creators in our marketing, because they are absolutely a really important part of the marketing mix in terms of bringing that face to the brand, adding that trust and credibility to who you are. But you also need to ensure that it's done in a really authentic way. And I can speak to this with some of the partnerships we used to run at RiderWare, where our most successful partnerships were with athletes such as Lauren Simpson, who were deeply involved throughout the life cycle of all the products which we collaborated on, from the design, from the marketing, and so on and so on. She'd be really deeply involved through every single stage of that, working with the internal team at RiderWare every single step of the way. And that was an example of a really strong, collaborative, authentic relationship. Whereas other ones, where you work with an influencer who is just in it for the money, is just looking to have a collection and take a clip of the ticket on the way through, feels more transactional. There's less authenticity there, and therefore those partnerships, unsurprisingly, did not go as well as we'd hoped to. So it's really important to measure out that risk and reward. While it's still important to make sure that you are making some big, bold bets, that you do look at it in a calculated fashion and really ensure that you do have all these basics covered off in terms of how that relationship is going to develop over time. That it doesn't just become a transactional relationship, but actually becomes something which is built on mutual trust and value for the customer. As we move through all this as well, we're going to go back to a topic which has dominated the headlines over the course of this year, which is global tariffs. And what we're seeing now in the US is becoming a bit of something taken out of the Woolworths and Coles playbook, where Walmart and Costco have now asked all their suppliers to absorb the tariffs. Now, what you're seeing here is that imports coming from the US and Canada now attract a 25% tariffs. Imports coming from China attract an additional 10% tariff on top of the regular taxes and duties if you are not paying the de minimis. Sorry, if you are not exempt from the de minimis. Now, this is unsurprising in the fact that we can see two of the largest retailers in America, in corporate America, now effectively saying that we have all the power, we have all the scale, so we are going to put it back on you as the person supplying us to absorb that tariff if you want us to continue stocking you. Now, this is obviously going to put a really huge strain on the margins of their suppliers. Of the suppliers who generally would be relying on imports from China, Mexico, and even Canada to be able to stock the shelves of Costco and Walmart. That rather than looking at this in the spirit of partnership, they're just looking at this and saying, hey, do you know what? You guys wear it all because we can afford to go with someone else. We have so much market power that we can absolutely find someone else. Now, this is absolutely cartel behavior or duopoly behavior in this case, with two incumbents who are in the market and are just throwing their weight around. And without much blowback, it appears, from the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, or any other governing body. And you can look at this from the supplier point of view, that there's so many economic factors outside of the tariffs which are putting a real strain on their margins. Where you can see the rise of global shipping costs has increased roughly about 10 to 15% year on year. That starts to put an increasing pressure on them as well. For retailers, we talk about the increasing marketing costs, the increased cost of customer acquisition. For our suppliers, particularly in Costco and Walmart's case, they're facing increasing shipping costs on top of the tariffs which we talked about, but also the currency fluctuations which are currently all over the world with how volatile the economic situation is, means that there's a massive squeeze in their margins, and with the expectation that they are just going to grin and bear it from two of the biggest customers. Now, if this sounds familiar, that's because that's what Coles and Woolworths have been doing forever and a day. And this is what a lot of the conversation has been about, which has sparked the supermarket review, which has only just been released. And we'll cover that off next week because there were a lot of findings for that in terms of how supermarkets needed to behave in order to encourage greater competition in this space, but also to provide a fairer go. And we'll get back to fairer go shortly for suppliers as well. Because what this squeezes out are the smaller suppliers, those smaller suppliers who are caught between their rising costs, but also the fact that their biggest customers are resisting them putting up their prices to be able to compensate them for that. And also keep in mind that from Australian lens, Woolworths and Coles are two of the most profitable corporations in this country. So when you take all this into account, that you need to think what is going to provide the best environment for the consumer. And that's where the government comes into it, where the government's role is to provide fairness and greater competition. And so I really hope that in the US, which is an absolute basket case right now, with the FTC and the DOJ really unable to do much, and a lot of the cases against some of the big corporations out there, such as Google, Amazon, being thrown out of court now. Because suddenly we're looking like the big fish are going to be the ones who are going to be, ruling the roost, at least during this current administration. That this is playing out without the oversight from the government, who are meant to be creating a much fairer environment for customers. Because at the end of the day, competition will actually bring down prices. Competition means that things will be deflationary because people are going to compete more to bring down prices. But when you don't have competition, such as we do in Australia with effectively a two-party supermarket cartel, is that prices go up because there's no one else to buy from. When you have two people who control 60 to 70% of the total market, they can dictate the terms of what anyone else is willing to pay because they control everything. So it's really important that we encourage competition. That competition will actually mean that people need to be much more efficient, much more cost effective and effective with what they do to bring down those prices. Because when you can bring those prices down, that is deflationary. Because even when you look at what the sources of inflation are in Australia, a large part of that has actually been from the massive increase in the cost of our consumables, our food, our grocery, those products which we rely on day, not prices of t-shirts or jeans or beauty products. They're being driven up by the other prices, which has led to an inflationary environment, which we're in now. So we need more competition. We need more competition so that suppliers can actually get a fairer go, so that they can continue to thrive and we can encourage more smaller players to come into the market. Because every day we're starting to see more and more small businesses calling it a day because it is just too difficult right now. And not enough is being done to be able to offset some of the pain which they're feeling. So it's really important that we consider these macroeconomic factors and how they could potentially be affecting Australia and how they are already affecting Australia and where the future is from now. But like I said, we'll cover off the supermarket deep dive next week into what the recommendations from the supermarket report is going to show. Because in Australia, we do have another challenge. And this strikes at the heart of what it fundamentally means to be Australian, where as a country, we've always had this mentality that Australians, you can have a fair go. Or as Kevin Rudd once said, everyone should have a fair shake of the sauce bottle. But in a Guardian article, we're recently starting to see in recent research that Australians have lost all hope in having a fair go. That in particular, there's an increased economic anxiety amongst middle-class consumers. Matter of fact, that if you are a Gen Z or millennial, and even beyond and younger, you're probably going to be a generation which is going to have a worse quality of life than your parents. Ever since the Depression era, every successive generation has been able to point to having a better quality of life in terms of their economic, social, and familial relationships. But more and more, we're starting to see that with this current generation coming through, of which I am one, we are likely to have a poorer quality of life. This is definitely not the case with Gen Xers, and maybe even arguably not millennials, but certainly Gen Z and younger will be feeling this, because we're starting to see that cost of living really outstrip real wage growth, with the rising cost of living and the rising cost of housing as well. That it's creating an environment where there is a lot of spending hesitancy amongst the younger generations, more so than ever before. And that while we're seeing further reports talking about how they will soon be the generation with the highest spending power, they actually may not be spending that much money, particularly on discretionary goods, because all their money is going to be tied up in the essentials, such as housing and other products, which are essential to your way of living. And this is then going to impact how they then choose to spend their money, where the concern from a retail perspective is that they start focusing on making value-based decisions. But value-based how? Is it going to be value-based just on the price, or value-based based on their values? Now, I'm a big advocate of brand and how powerful brand needs to be able to stand out in this sort of environment. That as people start to look for more value, if you choose to compete on price, it becomes a race to the bottom. So you need to compete on value, on what value you're providing beyond price. So that means really looking at how your brand operates, the environment which it operates in, the brand DNA of what you offer, and also around your ethics as well, and your pricing practices and sustainability as well. Because particularly as we start losing hope in this fair go, it becomes really important that we can actually show our customers how we're actually helping them achieve that, how we are actually trying to bring that back by offering a more transparent way of doing things. That whereas you have big conglomerates such as Woolies, Coles, and the Costcos and Walmarts of the world who aren't being so transparent in terms of what they do, the opportunity for small business is to show how transparent we can be. How transparent we can be in terms of the way in which we do business, that we are ultimately looking to give our customers a fair go, that we're not overcharging, that we are making a sound economic decision in order to run a business fairly, but also to provide our customers with maximum value as well. Because we're seeing that customer sentiment is continuing to decline, and that while we may see some slight fluctuations in terms of year-on-year increase in consumer spending, it's definitely not in the places where we want to be as a retail sector. And that there's more and more mistrust as well into the standard marketing claims which we see. And this is also tied in with the fact that we're seeing not just in addition to influencer brands suffering, the declining efficacy of UGC and influencer content, because there is increased skepticism towards what that is telling us. And that we do need to shift what the value proposition which we're offering is, away from just price towards the brand, towards ethics, towards sustainability. While that may not lead to a purchasing decision, it's starting to become, and has always been part of that mix, as something which consumers will say is important. But it's clear they won't make a decision purely on that. It's still important to show that you are able to actually be part of that solution. So what we need to do as a sector now is to be more transparent in terms of how we're operating, but also in terms of how we're communicating with our customers as well. Not to dress everything up into marketing fluff and jargon, but to really focus on what the value proposition is we have for our customers, of what we're offering them, but also making sure that we're treating everyone, from our suppliers to our staff to our customers, really, really fairly, and focusing on building a community. Focusing not just on transactions, but focusing on the value in which we're adding to our customers' lives. Because there's a lot of great brands who are doing this right now and experiencing some really great success, whether it be brands like Amino Z, who are really revolutionizing and disrupting the supplement space, to a brand like Unpiece on the swimsuit side, who are offering a premium experience with their swimsuits, but doing it in a way where they're also giving back to the community and focusing on building a real strong brand narrative and a value proposition beyond just cheap. which is a race to the bottom. So with this understanding that Australians, younger Australians, are really mistrusting and just disbelieving of the fact that we can have a fair go, that Australians can have a fair go anymore, means that this is an opportunity now for brands to show how we can provide a fair go, how that still can exist in Australian society. So with that in mind, we've just covered off a lot of stories here, which are symptomatic of how retail generally seems to be faring in 2025, with customers who are feeling more mistrustful of the garbage which they're hearing out there, but also being much more conscious of what they're spending on, but also some of the challenges which we're continuing to see, whether it be through Designer X, ZeroCo, Alley Fashion, Mosaic brands, who are struggling to navigate this complex retail environment we're in, where we're seeing such pressure on our margins through tariffs, increasing shipping costs, but also with customers as well, corporate customers who are putting the squeeze on suppliers rather than bearing some of that onus themselves. It's endemic of what we're seeing right now in the retail space. I want to leave you with some positive hope here that things will become better, that things won't be like this forever, but it's important for us as an industry to make sure that we are taking the right steps towards showing that we don't play into all the negativity which we can hear every day, but we can actually use it as fuel to do better, to do something different and really disrupt the way which we're doing it now. Because the brands who can disrupt the algorithm, who can disrupt how people view retail now, are the ones who are going to survive. They're the ones who are going to thrive. And there's some great examples all across the board, whether you look at brands like Hoka or On, who are really revolutionizing the footwear space right now and the active and the athleisure space. Brands like Muscle Republic here in Australia, who are growing from strength to strength by doing things differently, by focusing on the positive outcomes and building that community and showing there is a value proposition beyond just a race to the bottom, who are going to continue to grow. And that's my challenge to all of you, to think about your businesses and how you can do that, how you can adopt a different mindset in your business to really achieve outstanding growth through this period. So with that in mind, keep selling, keep innovating, keep growing, and we'll be back next week for This Week in E-Commerce.